This is the Out of Time Film Podcast, where your hosts Tom and John discuss everything from blockbuster films to TV and games like there's no tomorrow.
Hello, welcome to the Out of Time Film Podcast. I'm Tom.
I'm John.
And this week we are talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga.
Yes! Oh my god, I'm just upbeat, ready to fight the world because I recently watched this movie and there's so much to unpack. I was so happy that we've got to see more of this universe that George Miller is building, and it just puts a smile on my face that we get to see recurring characters or more of the backstories like Rictus and Rictus. But
He's back. The man himself,
so
he's returned.
Yeah, with Scrutus. Yeah, so I don't know what to say. I'm just so excited to talk about it. What about you, Tom?
I mean, I saw this with a friend who hasn't seen any of the Mad Max films, has no context behind it. And particularly when they announce Rictus Erectus and Scrotus, she was just like, what? Why? Why is this a thing?
Join the club. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought this was a really interesting addition to the universe. This is so different from all the rest. All the others are that kind of singular story, but it spans 15 years. The title is Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. And I remember seeing that and being like, that's a bit of a weird thing to call it. You could call it like a Mad Max story or, but like they went for Mad Max Saga. And watching it, it does actually feel like an appropriate name. It's long. It really gets into it. It's really layered and detailed. There's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into this film, which, I wouldn't expect anything less from George Miller. I think he absolutely, once again, this film is impeccably made and it's such an impressive feat. There's one action scene that I think took 78 days to shoot. The action scene is 15 minutes long and it's a really impressive thing to behold, everything that went into this film.
It's insane how much time and dedication has gone into films like these. And I can imagine George Miller is just sitting down and just trying to think of ideas like, how can I make this Mad Max? And it's just thinking of many ideas and how to put them all together. There was one sequence that I absolutely loved, and you can definitely see a huge difference between Fury Road and Furiosa. Furiosa is more story-driven. We get to see Furiosa throughout this story, 15 years, and I really like the structure of that story. Whereas, in Fury Road, that's more action-packed, that's more giving us a taste of what the world is like, getting an idea who the characters are. But yeah, Furiosa just add more of an expansion, getting to understand the world.
Yeah, the film is set into 5 or 6 chapters, and each one we kind of see a different moment in her life. It reminded me of 3,000 Years of Longing, and I love that film, and I think that George Miller is on incredible form with that. I really liked how that film built through little pockets of love throughout history. And we do the same thing in this, is that each time we focus on like a moment or some of those defining things that really make Furiosa who we see. And it's very obviously structured like, okay, we've got this action scene. Each section is going to have its one sequence. Is it sequence of the convoy? Is it the one in the bullet farm? Is it the confrontation between Dementus and Furiosa? Is it some of her early stuff when she's a child? All of that was really interesting to see unfold. I do wonder, though, I must say I felt that this film kind of lost a bit of a trick. Because Fury Road is one journey, because it is so streamlined, you can pack everything into that one direction. Potentially there's too much going on in this film. There's a lot. And I listened to an interview with George Miller where he said that they had all of this figured out when they made Fury Road. This was always part of the consideration of Furiosa's character. And I think that there's some really, really interesting ways that this film lines up. There are lines in Fury Road where Furiosa talks about what happened with her and her mother when she left the green place. And those things correlate. And I thought that was really interesting. But at the same time, I was watching it and I was like, there's so much going on that I feel like this film doesn't have nearly as much room for character as Fury Road did. We talked last week about Fury Road and we said that the best part about that film was that it managed to bring those character moments in. It's almost inexplicable because the film is so concerned of action, and that it manages to bring that character in is a really, really strong aspect of it. In this one, I did feel a little bit less connected throughout.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like a bit disconnected because, again, I was so engaged because the structures, I loved how we got a sense of time. It might be different for you, but for me, I just felt so immersed into the time. We get to see different sections of Furiosa's life. But there is a sense of disconnection in there. But I don't know. I didn't feel disconnected throughout the story. I was just so engaged with Furiosa. Like, she didn't have lot to say, but she said so much with the performance of Anya Taylor-Joy, and there was great characters that kind of helped alongside to show this dynamic. There was another character that I really loved, Jack. The character dynamic between Jack and Furiosa was so interesting, and it just kind of add more layers to Fury Road. You got to understand the backstory between her weapons as well with the knife. It just emphasized the moments in Fury Road. It just adds so much emotional layers in the moments, like especially when she realizes that the green place is gone. And there is a bit of disconnection. I don't know where I'm going with this, but there is a bit of disconnection with Chris Hemsworth's character because I just felt like this character was just kept repeating the same thing over and over again. But there is an interesting way to show that character, but I didn't feel any disconnection with this film.
I think you're right in the sense that the performances of this film are just incredible. Anya Taylor-Joy is a fantastic choice for a young Furiosa. I remember at the time when they announced this film, a lot of people were saying, well, why do you need to recast her? It should just be Charlize Theron again. And I think that as much as that would have been great to see a Furiosa film with Charlize Theron playing that role, Anya Taylor-Joy, and not just Anya Taylor-Joy, but the actor who plays young Furiosa, Alyla Browne, I thought she was incredible. And Furiosa is somebody who from the very beginning can't really speak because, to speak would be to give away the green place. And it's great to see her drive and to see her go through different aspects of her life and climb her way up to the top. I did really like a lot of that. But there's a lot of it that I did feel was aimless. And I think you're right about Chris Hemsworth, Dementus. He's a very one-note character, and the argument of the film, which I think is a really compelling argument, is that these people can't change and you're going to be stuck in the same cycle of violence for a long time. Furiosa kind of struggles with that towards the end. It's like, is she just Dementus? Is she just little Dementus, as he literally dubs her? Really, really compelling stuff. Really interesting stuff. But I don't know how much that really added for me. Like, when you think about what we know from Fury Road, I'm trying to talk about this without getting into spoilers, but like none of it really added much that I was like, oh, if anything, it complicated a lot of those things. A big part that I was really hoping to see was more of Furiosa's relationship with Immortan Joe. How did they meet? How did he treat her? It could be like 10 years or so before Fury Road, maybe a little bit less, but we don't really get any of that. That never really kind of comes into play. If anything, all the characters that we see, we see Immortan Joe and we see the Bullet Farmer and we see the People Eater, they're all exactly the same as they were in Fury Road. There's no change. This is a prequel, and yet we're just seeing the exact same characters. Like Immortan Joe's hair is even the same length. I was disappointed because I was hoping to see that progression, and I think that would have been a much bigger problem for me if it wasn't for how spectacularly this film was made. Again, George Miller is just on another level, and all the action and all of the practical elements and the acting was all just top notch. As I said last week, George Miller is a very visual director. He writes his films as silent films. He's not really bothered about dialogue, and all of that is so well communicated. The visual storytelling is immaculate. I just feel like I wasn't that invested in the characters. Nothing really made me go, oh my God, yes, I feel for this. There was no equivalent of Nux and Capable, or the relationship between Max and Furiosa, or even the relationship that Immortan Joe has with his wives in Fury Road. None of that translated. It felt like that core was missing. The little donut hole, like Benoit Blanc would say, there's a hole in the middle of this donut. It felt like it was missing something.
I didn't really think of that, to be honest. Again, I was just learning about the world. I would love to see the relationship more between Immortan Joe and Furiosa. Like, why was there so much tension in Fury Road? But you do understand with the wives. So that was like a big thing with Furiosa. Like, she tried to connect with the wives, but found a way for the ending of the film. And I wish we could have seen more of that relationship between Dementus. We did for a bit in the early beginning. Like, he did like a lot of messed up things, and there's so many layers to that. But then I could have see a different side to Dementus of why is he like this. And the only character that I really cared for was Furiosa, but the other characters, I did like Jack, but there needed to be something to connect that emotional side, because you do get to see that emotional side in Furiosa in the smallest of moments, and the visual storytelling is great in this one, but in Fury Road it's so much better because the quietest moments are just perfection and you get to understand them on an emotional level. But yeah, Molson Joe, I wish that we could have seen a different side to him in this one. We don't want to see the same copy for the Fury Road because this is a different time.
Yeah, I think the core reason for why this film doesn't hit as hard as Fury Road, and I want to stress, this film is really great, and I really
It's
liked
great.
it.
I loved
It's
it.
just, how do you follow Fury Road? That is a difficult thing to do, and I am more critical because I know that George Miller can do more, and I think that the core thing is because this is a saga and not a single thing. As you said, kind of Dementus kind of disappears in the middle a little bit. We don't really get much from him, and so therefore his
Yeah.
standing as an antagonistic threat, he doesn't feel as important to Furiosa in her life, and therefore Immortan Joe also kind of fades into the background a little bit. At times, it kind of even becomes this mentor-student thing between her and Jack. There's also maybe even
Yeah.
like some sort of romantic suggestions between the two, and all of that didn't really feel like much to me. It didn't really feel like it added much, and I think because they're going for such a broad scope, it does lose something. There are numerous moments that they kind of skip over, like this 44-day war. That's a lot.
That's a
You
pretty
know,
big war, you know?
yeah,
Just
like that,
like,
a lot goes on, and it
why
just
did
kind of
gloss
like,
over
yeah.
it? You know who we got to see back again?
Mm,
The doof,
the
the
Doof
guy with the
Warrior.
yeah, the doof warrior. You know, like I was
Yes.
like in the cinema, I was like, oh my god, it's him! He's
There
back!
he
Oh my
is.
god!
There were some really mental connections to Fury Road. Like
Yeah,
the doctor, the people doctor or whatever he's called.
there he
Like he
is. Yeah,
shows up and it's like, right, yeah, fine. Like there are
cool,
some really
great.
fun connections, to be fair.
And then Max was chilling for a scene. You know, you get to see Max.
Yeah. What's going on with that? I was like,
That was pretty cool, to be
okay.
honest. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
there's Max. You know, that's like a crazy cameo. You don't get to see their face, but you
hmm
understand who he is. It's
hmm
like, okay, there's a loner. They go, it's Max. Oh my god, it's crazy. So
Yeah,
I love
you see the
connections.
car and you
Yeah,
know it feels like such a deep world. We really get a sense of, because you know, in Fury Road you feel that there's so much more beyond this journey that they're going on, and in this film you see it. We get to see the green place, we get to see Dementus's whole crew in quite a few points in time. You know, we get to see where do some of these people, you know, Oil Town and the Bullet Farm, like where these people come from, as well as the Citadel. We get to see a lot more of the intricacies and the different ways of life. We get to see the war rig on its maiden voyage, like when it's first made. And it's like really interesting to see all those expansions. You
yeah,
can tell that George Miller has so many ideas. I mean, the next Mad Max film, if it's made, will be Mad Max The Wasteland, which is a prequel to Fury Road. And that, you know, that could possibly even be the final Mad Max film. But like,
yeah.
you can tell that he's brimming with so many more stories and so many more ideas. I wonder whether maybe this film should have been 3 hours plus. It's one of those
Hey,
things.
I would have been there. I would have been there
Yeah.
if it was like a 3 hour film because I really loved that each chapter told its own story but brought things all together. But 3 hours would have been amazing because a lot of people today just think, oh, we don't need long movies. They have so much potential to bring in so many ideas about the characters. But please, George Miller, please, we need more of Fury Road and Furiosa because it was really cool to see that again on the big
Mm.
screen. And imagine you're George Miller, right?
I'm imagining it. I
I've
can see it.
yeah, yeah.
I am George Miller.
You're just sitting down and you're just like, I've perhaps made a great action movie that everybody really loves, that is really highly regarded. How am I going to follow that up? It's like the
Mm.
most conflicting thing ever if you think about it. It's just like, okay, how am I supposed to top that? And it's scary, to be honest. There's so many ideas that you have, and it's like, is it not going to top that? So it's interesting when you think of that. It's so well beloved. You don't want to fail that in some kind of way. But again, I think George Miller was just excited to work on these type of stories again because you can really get to see this creative side of him. Like you get to see that in Babe 2.
Not Babe 2 Pig in the City, John. You're going for it with the references. We're going deep cut
Yeah,
into George Miller's filmography.
yeah,
Some people have even suggested that George Miller could do the next Thor film because he said that he would love to work with Chris Hemsworth again. And I must say that's a great idea. You know,
that's a great idea.
obviously I don't want George Miller to be battling out with Marvel, but if the studio gave him the free reign, he could make a fantastic film. You know, if he had the passion behind it. Because again, you can tell the films that he does make, the best ones, are because he has an insane amount of passion behind it. It's kind of funny that everyone's like, oh my God, Fury Road, incredible. Where's the sequel? And he was like, hold up, you will get your sequel. But first, I'm going to make my 2-hour, 45-minute film about genies. And it's going to be this commentary on, like, you know, the Orient and you know, like all these stereotypes in filmmaking and 1001 Nights, all these different things.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you'll get your Fury Road prequel, sequel.
And the other thing would be, he's like, we'll get onto Fury Road once we get the storyboards, because he spent so much time with the storyboards trying to get all together. Imagine he did the same for Furiosa. We'll get onto that once the storyboards are made. I love it.
Yeah, in so many ways, this film is the progression of Fury Road. It has more experience, it has more excitement, and there's just so many great moments in this film that the action is just nothing else to say. It really is just excellent. Right, let's get into spoilers. What did you think about Dementus's death? That's one thing that I'm curious about, because that was very unconventional.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the idea of there are different ways how Dementus died. There was this myth. But then the real thing, he got trapped inside the citadel where there was a tree that was growing on top of him. And it's a very strange way to show a character's comeuppance. Because I was like, is there going to be a sort of way to mirror that anger that Furiosa had when Dementus killed her mother? This one, I was like, okay, I get it. I get that idea of like she planted that tree, but it just kind of just cut ties with the emotional level.
Yeah, I was underwhelmed by the finale, I must say. Like, you know, we get the moment where Furiosa makes herself the arm and, you know, we see her for the very
That was
first
so
time.
metal. It was
Yeah,
so
right?
metal.
Really cool. We see her for the very first time as we meet her in Fury Road. She's got the grease paint on and she's shaved her head and all that. Really cool stuff. And like her final confrontation with Dementus is really great, but also really not great. There's some really interesting stuff, as I've kind of alluded to earlier, where he says, you're going to be just like me. And she's, you know, she's trying to prove him wrong. And she's demanding to have her childhood and her mother back. And he's saying, there's no way you could kill me that's quite going to satisfy that need of revenge. And so for her
Yeah.
to trap him in the citadel and to put that tree is so brilliant. I think Dementus was unfortunately a bit of an underdeveloped character. I think if we'd have got to see a little bit more about his family, that would have been really interesting. But then the thing that doesn't stick right with me is that the very final thing, she brings the fresh peach to the wives that we see in Fury Road that she
Yep.
helps to escape. But then the whole film, like, there's a really interesting part at the beginning when Dementus gives Furiosa to Immortan Joe, and Immortan Joe's like, you'll be one of my wives one day. And I thought to myself, that's brilliant. What a perfect way to show why Furiosa wants to help the wives in Fury Road. But then she leaves like immediately and becomes a worker. We don't really get to see what kind of conditions she experiences, what kind of suffering. What is it actually like to be a wife of Immortan Joe? We get that a lot in Fury Road and not really much in this film. I want to know
Yeah.
what pushed Furiosa to have that kind of hatred. We don't really see that. We know it. We are told about it and we understand it, but we don't really see it. Again, last week when we did Fury Road, I said, I really hope that we get some sort of context to that moment in Fury Road where Furiosa says,
Yeah.
remember me, to Immortan Joe. She's pushing him to be like, yeah, you did all this to me and now I'm going to get my revenge finally. But in this one, we barely see them interact and we barely see how he has made her life difficult. She actually manages to escape the wives quite easily and no one really cares. I was really hoping for something more about that. And so the ending, while I was excited and while it was cool to see, I mean, Charlize Theron was there. Was that a deleted scene from Fury Road? I have no idea. Or maybe that was just from the beginning. I don't really remember seeing that in Fury Road. It was really cool to see that. And then like we got like the flashes of Fury Road in the credits, but it just felt a little bit underwhelming. And for all this build up, I didn't really feel like it was like, yeah, it was like, ah.
I think I had a realization. I think I know why she said, remember me. This is just pure speculation. So I think what she's saying, she did say that to Dementus, like, remember me. I think it's to mirror that exactly. I think it's referring to the idea of like Furiosa did meet Immortan Joe when she was younger, and it's the idea of like the world is savage and it takes so many people away because this is the world of Mad Max. And I wonder, it's like, this is the underdog that we are following Furiosa, that she climbs her way to become a worker. I mean, she was taken away by Rictus and she had no choice, so she's trying to work her way to that world. And it's like, she wanted that revenge of like maybe being forgotten by something. I don't know. It's just an idea. I don't know. It just felt something that kind of clicked. I don't know. I don't know what to explain here. I think I'm going
Yeah,
crazy.
well, there is this idea. Yeah, like you could definitely read that as in like a remember me. You wanted me to just be your wife, but here I am. I've climbed my way up in the ranks, and I am going to kill you now. That's really interesting.
In
Like,
order what you said, we could have seen more of that
yeah,
tension.
exactly. I feel like maybe
Yeah.
that could have been a little bit. Again, I was just disappointed because I think my expectations were sky high and Fury Road was so good. This is a really great film. It's a really impressive film. I just felt it was hollow, like that. Unfortunately, I think it was really ambitious and it had this whole saga in mind, but it didn't. Like, the score, for instance, Tom Holkenborg, Junkie XL was back. And there was never a moment when the score surprised me as much as like that theme between Nux and Capable in Fury Road. I never felt like, oh my God, this is beautiful, this is surprising, this is tender. It was all just like, brah, 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 like it was all like
Yeah.
really, really intense, really, really metal. And I'm not heartbroken by it, but it just didn't have that same emotional depth,
It didn't
emotional
have a flair to
range.
Furiosa, because this is Furiosa's
Yeah.
movie, right? And you want to have some different perspective of
Mm.
sound for this, like we're exploring different characters. But yeah, it was just like, "Rah, rah." I mean, there was some really interesting moments with the music, with the choir. You get to see some
Mm.
like cosmic horror that you're just gonna witness upon on this movie. But no, we don't get to see like those moments. So there were some really metal moments in the movie, like when she cuts her arm off and then she gets to
Yeah.
build it, and it's just like we could have seen more of that character development in some form of way. You do get to see some character development in this one, but the film is just very impressive.
Yeah, I really hope this film does better at the box office because it deserves to do
Please,
better
please
than it
do, but
is,
please, I need to.
Yeah, and I really want to see the next one as well. But yeah, but that is Furiosa. What are you going to give it out of 10?
I'm gonna give it an 8.
I'm also going to give it an 8. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you're listening on YouTube and you liked it, you can like and subscribe if you want to see more. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, you can follow and give us a 5-star review if you think we're worthy. And next week, we're going to be doing Tales of the Empire, which is a Star Wars
Oh,
show that has been out for a while. So we're catching up on that. So
yes.
get ready, I guess.
Get ready.
And you can send us an email at ourstimefilmpod@gmail.com. We'll be recording next Saturday, so let us know your thoughts on Tales of the Empire by then, and we will answer it right here on the podcast next week.
Yes, and you can follow us on Instagram at Out of Time Film Pod to see our incredible thumbnails from Zain Afzal, on Twitter for more thoughts from me and Tom, and TikTok to see edited clips, which are all also on Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. And you can find links to that all in the description below. Thanks to Jones-Meyer for the excellent theme, and Ronan Phillips for vocals as always. And I think that's everything. Take away, Given.
Give nothing back.
Goodbye.
Bye.